Welcome to this video from iQuanta. I'm Amit Panchmatia and we'll talk about the CET strategy in the last 20 days. So first, let's quickly understand when is the CET being held and what are the different options. So the first slot or the first attempt will be between 6th to 8th April and the second is around 9th May. So for the first one, you have approximately 20 days left. Yes, for the second one, you have approximately still 50 days left. So you can still apply a lot of strategies even for that one. But today I will be talking about applying what would you do in the next 20 days such that you can maximize your scores. So I'm sure all of y'all have started taking some mock or the other. If you haven't written a lot of mocks, but at least written a couple of mocks, which helps you to understand where you stand right now. Now, you could be at a score of 100, you could be a score of 90, 120, whatever. And most probably you want to reach a target of 150. And sometimes even 150 will not be enough and sometimes it will be very good. So that will depend on slot to slot. So instead of targeting a score, always try to target a percentile. That means in the slot which I will write the test, am I among the top few students who have taken the test? That is the best way to look at it because scores and percentiles will keep varying from slots to slot. Okay. So all of y'all must have started that and hence y'all would have an idea where you're standing. Now, very importantly, from that idea where you're standing, you can start working towards it. Let's first talk about LR because that's a huge area. When I talk about LR, that's a huge area in CET. 75 marks we have LR and then 25 marks we have analytical reasoning, which is mainly visual reasoning. Okay, so the 75 marks of LR will have 50 marks of traditional LR like blood relation, number series, coding, decoding, and a lot of other such topics. And 25 marks will be more puzzle-based questions. And then there'll be 25 marks of visual reasoning. So my suggestion to you over here is at least the first 50 marks, which we talk about, where we talk about blood relation, number series, and all these things. You've already done these topics for exams like MAH, SNAP. You prepared for these topics. You don't need to revise a lot for these topics because also these topics in CET are normally pretty simple. Not very difficult questions are asked. So hence a student, if he plans to do around 200 to 50 questions also, which if you see actually is like 4 mocks. Okay, even 4 mocks are 350 questions. So if you look at 4 mocks and say, okay, 350 questions for practice, I will do each area, cut 25, 30 questions for practice or even more, maybe a little bit, maybe 40, 45 questions of practice per area. I'm sure you'll complete this area comfortably and you'll become good at this area. And your accuracy can go very high at this area. I believe CET my accuracy at 100% is very difficult, but yeah, you can try and reach in such areas very high accuracy because you also need the higher scores. Okay. The second part is visual reasoning. Yeah, I know a lot of students get completely scared of visual reasoning. My suggestion is go through a workshop of 3-4 hours, study visual reasoning for 3-4 hours well, and then keep attempting it in mocks and keep analyzing. Visual reasoning is one area from mocks I would want you to analyze. Otherwise, I believe CET mein mocks ka analysis is not that important as it was in CAT. You know, in CAT, we used to keep telling you that if you write a test for 2 hours, you will have to analyze it for 3 to 4 hours. Maybe for CET, it is not that important because I believe most of the questions you might have just made a silly mistake or something, or in a rush, you might have misunderstood the question, which is what you need to avoid. Yes, but the visual reasoning part, you need to analyze well. By the way, I'm sure you all know that you have to solve 200 questions in 150 minutes. Even if I look at having around 160 to 170 genuine attempts, I have around 45 to 50 seconds per question. Because there is no negative marking, obviously I'll just attempt randomly I'll have some random attempts also. But the lower the number of random attempts, always better it is. Also, always decide and see which is your weakest area because there are no sectional cutoffs. There are no sectional timings. Which are your weakest area? Those are the areas where you will have to make more random attempts. Okay. Your stronger areas, you should always have time for your stronger areas. So suppose logic is your strong area, then you would always want to have good amount of time. I will discuss timings also, but you should have good amount of time for logic so that you are not having to attempt any random attempts here. Again, don't waste too much time on a question. If you feel after 30-35 seconds you're not going anywhere, just mark something and move ahead. No point waiting for it. And here, there is no time to put it into a bucket and say, okay, I'll come back to it and all that. That doesn't happen. CET may rarely do you get a chance to come back to a question. So never try that strategy. I never think it works. Over the years I've seen, 200 questions, 150 minutes, people don't get that time. Okay, so we've already spoken about logic, how we should look at logic. Yes, the puzzles area can be slightly more challenging. You will need to solve more questions around that. So take that seriously, work hard towards that, and I'm sure you'll do well there also. Okay, visual reasoning, as I said, you should watch a 3 to 4 hour workshop, learn some tricks of visual reasoning, typical kind of questions which are asked, and then attempt with every mock visual reasoning and analyze it. So that takes care of the first part of your logic, first part of your test, which is 100 marks of logic. Now coming to quant and verbal. Now what about timing? How much time should I give? So I will look at it as my strength, where I'm scoring more. If I feel that if I give around, say, I have 150 minutes, if I give around 75 to 80 minutes also on logic, but I normally score very good score in logic, out of 100 I'm getting 85, 90 and so on, then it is worth giving that 5-10 minutes extra. Always understand that. Okay. Now moving on to quant and verbal. Normally I've seen students, either they are strong at quant or they are strong at verbal. One of the areas are strong. Now start thinking that way. If you're strong at quant, that means you've prepared really well for all the exams like CAT, XAT, MAT, SNAP, very well in quant, and you were a good student there, then CET quant should not be very difficult for you. You will normally find CET quant pretty manageable. Yes, even though over the last few years, quant has got slightly difficult, but it is never that difficult as per CAT levels or XAT levels. So hence these 50 questions, you should try to attempt within around 40 minutes. Now, work on your areas. Arithmetic will always be asked, geometry is asked, little bit of probability is asked. So work on these areas strongly, go through the mocks, go through the last year papers, and you will understand which area you are good at. As we've been always saying, when any of these tests, arithmetic you'll have to be good at. There is no real choice. You have to be good at arithmetic, and arithmetic in CET also is going to be asked. I would say out of the 50 questions, at least 15 to 18 questions will be arithmetic. Okay, let's go ahead and now talk about the last area, which is verbal. Now in verbal, the RCs are much easier to read compared to RCs at CAT and XAT. What does that do? You have to read faster, analyze them faster, and you have to attempt faster. Also, a lot of other areas like grammar and all the questions are pretty straightforward. And in verbal, especially if it is a meaning question or something like that, either you know the answer or you don't know the answer. No point wasting too much time over it. Mark our answer and move ahead. I normally believe that you can do well at verbal within 30 to 35 minutes. Okay. Also remember, very difficult to have genuine 200 attempts. So maybe depending on your strength and your weakness. So I've broken up the test into 2 parts instead of 4 parts. One is the logical reasoning plus the visual reasoning part, and verbal and quant. Now, depending on where your strength is lying through the mocks, where are you getting those 85, 90 marks? In which of these 2 areas? You spend 5-10 minutes more there and try and attempt close to 100 questions. Maybe not all 100, but 94, 95, and only 5 or 6 attempts which are randomly marked. While in the second part, you will have maybe 70 attempts and you will have around 25, 30 random attempts. So that is how you have to break up your test. Now, that was how you break up your test. How would you write your test, or how would you actually start doing it mocks? So whatever strategy you want to build it in the mocks. You have 20 days. In these 20 days, I would expect you to solve at least 10 mocks. CET is a lot of, because also through mocks, I'm making you practice. So minimum 10 mocks. So in every alternate day also, if you're writing a mock, you're spending around 2.5 hours writing mock itself, right? The remaining time, which you'll have to start putting into your effort, go to, when you write a mock, when I said you don't need to analyze, you don't need to analyze in detail. Quickly go through an area in quant and say, okay, normally I'm doing bad at geometry. Then quickly revise geometry. Spend 1 or 2 days on geometry, revise it. For CET level, 1 or 2 days revision on geometry will be good enough. Or if you're not done probability too well, do a little bit of probability and you will get better at it. With that, on the side, keep practicing logic every single time. Logic hai, keep practicing. So what I would do, I would keep doing logic every day. And when I mean logic, I would do logical reasoning, I would do the puzzles part, I would do the visual reasoning. Every day I would do a little bit of that. On the second day, or with the second subject on that day, I would do verbal, and on the next day I would do logic with quant. So it is logic with verbal, logic with quant, and that way I would keep moving ahead, and that is how I would break up my time. Obviously, for people who are weak at a particular area, will have to make that decision. They will have to tweak this thing a little bit around so that they can work on their weaker areas. See, in the prep plan, or the preparation period, you need to work harder in your weak areas. While in the test, you need to work harder in your strong areas, because in the test, when you work hard on your strong areas, you will see results. As I said earlier also, do not just depend on a particular score. Don't say, okay, 145 last year was good enough, or my friend wrote it in a particular slot and he got 125, that was good enough. I know of students who last year one got 158 and also were not good enough in a particular slot. So don't think that way. Every slot, the difficulty level keeps varying. Give it your best attempt. Yes, a benchmark score would be, a good benchmark score would be anywhere between 145 to 155. I think that would be normally a good score, right? So that's the kind of score you need to target at your mocks, unless your mocks are slightly difficult. Obviously, when you look at those mocks, you will also see what the topper has scored in that mock. How far are you from the topper? What are the difference in scores? So like 20 marks was difference, and how do I need to cover up that 20 marks is as your strategy. Also, when you're doing your mock attempts, when you're doing your mocks, please be very careful of what you had randomly marked and how many marks did you get in those random questions. Okay, very important. Now, there are two choices you have. One is don't mark random attempts in mocks. That means just leave them. If you have attempted 160, 170 questions, so be it. Get marks out of that. And assume that out of the remaining 30, 35, 40 attempts, you would get, say, 4 or 5 questions correct. You would have got lucky and would have got 4 or 5 questions correct. Now that number can keep changing, and on the day of the CET, you might have a great positive correlation also there. But don't think of it, you can't depend on that. You can't say, okay, मैं 160 attempts karunga, I'll get 120 ka score there, and 40 attempts are left over, and I will get 20 right there. It doesn't work that way, right? You can't expect a 50% score from random attempts. Obviously, because CET has no negative marking, you will have to keep going ahead and you have to keep marking. Now comes the part about students who are now going to look at particular areas. You know, say they have looked out of the 3 areas in CET. People have said, okay, I have looked well at quant and verbal. I haven't done logic well. Then my suggestion would be, out of the 20 days, nearly 7 or 8 days should go to logic, because I believe logic will be the most crucial area for CET. And same way, if you haven't done quant or verbal, then 4-5 days revision will be good enough. But as I said, writing mocks from here onwards, minimum writing 8 to 10 mocks is like at most important. You can't do without that. Don't start thinking of the second attempt already, because if you're already thinking of the second attempt, then you've already kind of given up on this attempt. That's not a very good way to look at it. Yes, you can always say that, yes, post the first attempt, I will write the second attempt, but there should be a lot of learnings from the first attempt. Be ready for some kind of change in the test, that, okay, the test might change a little bit, quant might get a little bit more difficult, or they might add a little bit more vagueness in quant, which has happened a couple of years. So be ready for it and don't get flustered on the day of the CET. Once you're ready for that, once you're saying that, okay, I'm ready for these kind of things which happen on the day of the test, you're pretty good. You're normally good enough. So with that, I would like to end this video. I've spoken about things. People can put up their questions in the chat and I'll try and answer them. And obviously we will have one more video closer towards CET, talking about a last 1 week prep or something like that. We'll come out with that also. And then once the first attempt is over, we will see how the second attempt goes, or what kind of preparation do you need for the second attempt. We can talk again that time. Thank you so much for watching.